This is the connector used on the original PS Vita. The use of a proprietary charging port means that you have to buy a specific cable just for your PS Vita to charge, something which Sony opted to change for the revised slimmer version of the Vita. What I'm going to do here is add a USB Type-C port and create a little adapter that will allow me to charge my Vita through a USB Type-C cable. The adapter I'll be making here will be external, so I'll mention that it is possible to add a USB Type-C port internally to the console, though of course it's much more risky to mod the console directly. There'll be a link in the description showing the internal mod if that's something you're interested in. Now I've actually already created something similar to this a few years back. This time it was using a micro USB port, and as you can see the result looks fairly decent. To complete the adapter we'll require an additional PCB, which will hold the USB Type-C port along with the resistors needed for use with smart chargers. It also breaks out the pads that will be needed later on when soldering wires to the original Vita connector. This board does stick out past the end of the housing, so it will require some modification to slot it in place. This is due to the length of the USB Type-C port and the need to make sure there's a good connection to make sure the port doesn't come loose. In order to mod the housing, you want to make two little cuts either side and just remove the plastic entirely down to the housing base. The board should then fit nicely in the housing. You'll need to solder a wire to each of the 4 pads on this board, which will connect later on to the Vita connector board. Once the wires are ready, you can then go ahead and solder them to the Vita connector board. I'll briefly show the diagram on screen here so you can see how it should be wired up, but you can also find this image in our blog post, which will be linked in the description. To fit the top of the housing, you'll also need to cut a little section out, again to fit around the USB Type-C port. You don't need to cut quite as much as for the bottom half of the shell, so I'd recommend sitting the housing on top of the port just so you can get an idea of how much needs to be removed. With that done, you can now complete the adapter by putting the 2 halves together. Congratulations, your board is now complete. You might want to add a bit of filler around the end just to make it look a little bit tidier, but I've chose not to do that. It is only a charging adapter after all. Appearance is not really important. I do plan on coming back to this at some point after realising that the PCB attached to the Vita connector is actually just a friction fit. It slides out very easily, and therefore this PCB could also be replaced and integrated with the USB Type-C board. That's something I plan to look at in the future, along with creating a custom 3D printed housing to make things a little bit neater. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that video. I hope you like this video. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to stick around for the next one.